picture this. You're sitting in a meeting, right? You're contributing ideas. People are, nodding along with you. And on the outside, you look totally composed.
Oh, yeah, you got the binder, the posture, the whole professional mask on.
Exactly. You have the notes, you have the data, you are visibly doing the job. But internally, you are just screaming. Your
Yeah.
brain is running this panic, looping monologue that's like, any minute now, they're going to realize I am a total fraud who just got really lucky.
Right. Like the adult police are going to literally burst through the door, tap you on the shoulder, and just expose you to everyone in the room.
Yes, it is such a visceral feeling, just that stomach-dropping dread of being found out, and it is exhausting. I mean, if you're listening right now and feeling that in your chest, welcome. You're listening to the Inquiry Talks, and today we are doing a deep dive into a massive stack of psychological research, clinical studies, and some really surprising new data out of MIT to figure out why exactly your brain does this to you.
It's a really important conversation to have, honestly.
It really is. We're going to break down why so many high-achieving people feel like complete frauds. And here is where it gets super interesting. We are going to explore how this exact glitch in our brains might actually be like a hidden superpower.
I really love how you framed that. And to you listening right now, if that meeting room scenario made your shoulders instantly tense up, I just want to start by validating exactly what you were feeling, because this isn't just some isolated insecurity, right? You aren't uniquely broken.
Oh, definitely not. You always feel like you're the only one, but you're so not.
No. It is a highly documented psychological phenomenon. In fact, a systematic review of the research actually shows that up to 82% of people experience this at some point in their life.
Wait, 82%? That is wild.
Yeah, you are in the overwhelming majority. Basically, almost everyone in that meeting room with you is secretly feeling the exact same way.
Okay, let's really unpack this then, because if we want to figure out how to stop feeling like a fraud, I feel like we can't just, talk about the symptoms. We have to understand the underlying mechanics, like what is actually happening in our neural pathways. Where does this whole concept even come from?
Well, the formal recognition actually dates back to 1978. There were these two clinical psychologists, Pauline Rose Clance and Suzanne Imes, and they coined the term imposter phenomenon.
Okay, 1978. So this has been studied for a while.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And in their initial research, they observed this primarily in high-achieving women. I mean, these were brilliant, highly successful professionals, academics, people who, despite their advanced degrees and massive, undeniable accomplishments, harbored this intense, concealed feeling of intellectual phoniness.
Right, but the research has completely expanded since then, hasn't it? Like we know now it's not just women.
Precisely. Fast forward to today, and the data is crystal clear on this. It affects everyone across all demographics, genders, professions, you name it. But what Clance and Imes identified back in the 70s that is still entirely foundational today is something they called the imposter cycle.
Ooh, the imposter cycle. I feel like I definitely live in that cycle. Break down how that actually operates in real time.
So it starts the exact moment you are handed an achievement-related task, say a new project at work, a major presentation, or a difficult exam.
Right, and your stomach instantly drops.
Exactly. Immediately, it triggers this intense anxiety. And that anxiety basically forces the brain down one of two very extreme behavioral pathways. Path A is severe procrastination.
Oh, I know Path A very well. That's the one where you just ignore it until you have a frantic, frenzied rush at the absolute last minute to get it done.
You got it. And then path B is massive, exhausting overpreparation.
So you basically either put it off until the fear of failure literally outweighs the dread of starting, or you just work yourself to the bone until 2 a.m. every single night.
Yeah, there's no middle ground. But here's the kicker. Let's say you finish the task.
Yeah.
And you succeed. You get the promotion or the A+, or your boss gives you great feedback.
Right. And rationally, shouldn't that be the end of it? Shouldn't your brain just look at that and say,
Yeah.
oh, hey, look, evidence that I'm actually competent?
You'd think so. You do get a very brief sense of relief, but it is entirely fleeting. Because almost immediately, your brain externalizes the success. It completely refuses to take credit.
Wait, how does it justify that?
Well, if you went down path B and overprepared, your brain rationalizes it by saying, well, I only succeeded because I worked twice as hard as everyone else. I just had to overcompensate for my total lack of natural talent.
Oh my gosh, yes. And what if you went down Path A? Like if you procrastinated and still did well?
Then your brain says, I just got lucky this time. I somehow fooled them, but I definitely won't be able to pull that off again. The luck is going to run out. So the success is never, ever internalized. And the cycle just entirely resets the next time a task comes up.
But why? I mean, really, why doesn't the evidence of our own success rewrite the code? It's like my brain has this spam filter that is automatically programmed to delete any proof of my own competence, but it saves like every single minor mistake in a permanent high priority file.
That spam filter analogy is brilliant, actually, because it hits on exactly what the brain is doing. It is trying to protect you.
Protect me from what?
Right.
Being happy.
From risk. The brain's primary directive is safety, right? Not
Yeah.
accuracy. If you fully internalize your success, if you walk around saying, I am brilliant and highly capable, what happens next?
I guess people expect you to keep being brilliant.
Exactly. The bar gets raised. The expectations for your next performance go way up. And to the amygdala, the fear center of the brain, higher expectations mean a higher risk of failure, a higher risk of social rejection, and ultimately a higher risk of being cast out of the group.
Oh, wow. Okay. So by believing I'm a fraud, I am subconsciously keeping my own expectations low. It's like a really perverse defense mechanism to protect myself from the vulnerability of owning my own power.
That's exactly it. It's this twisted safety blanket. And it happens because our brains are actually calibrated completely backward when it comes to assessing our own competence.
Calibrated backward. What do you mean by that?
Well, have you ever wondered why some of the most genuinely incompetent people seem to walk around with this absolute unwavering confidence?
Oh my gosh, yes. It is so infuriating. You see people who are wildly underqualified, just breezing through life, completely unbothered by self-doubt. Meanwhile, the smartest people I know are practically paralyzed by it.
Right. There is actually a clinical name for that. It's a cognitive bias called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And it is essentially the exact opposite of imposter syndrome. The research shows that people who score in the bottom 10% of competence in a given area consistently overestimate their abilities. They honestly think they score in the top 25%.
But how is that even possible? Like, how do they not see their own mistakes?
Because they literally lack the knowledge required to recognize their own lack of knowledge. I mean, to know you are bad at something, you have to understand the mechanics of what makes someone good at it. But as you learn more, as you become highly competent, which describes the people suffering from imposter syndrome, the mechanics flip.
Wait, explain that. Why does getting smarter actually make you feel less competent?
Think of your knowledge as a flashlight in the dark woods, okay? When you know very little, your flashlight is tiny. You only see a few trees right in front of you, so you think, oh, I've got this figured out. This forest is small. That's the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Okay, that makes sense.
But as you become an expert, your flashlight turns into this massive floodlight. Suddenly, you can see miles deep into the woods. You see how vast the field is, how complex the variables are, and basically how much you still don't know. The perimeter of your known ignorance expands massively.
That is wild. So your brain is literally trolling you with your own intelligence. The smarter you are, the more you realize what you don't know, which actively shrinks your perception of your own expertise.
Exactly. You assume that if something is easy for you, or if you can figure it out, it must be easy for everyone else. Now, Dr. Valerie Young, who's an expert who has built on decades of this research, she points out that this backward calibration doesn't look the same for everyone.
Oh, of course not. We all have to have our own personalized brands of torture.
Exactly. Our brains customize how they torture us. So she identified 5 types of imposters, which are essentially the internal, unspoken rules we use to punish ourselves.
Okay, let's explore these, because I guarantee you, if you were listening right now, you are going to have a light bulb moment with at least one of these. What are these secret rules we're judging ourselves by?
So let's start with the perfectionist. For them, the focus is entirely on how a task is done. If a major project is 99% successful, they view it as a complete, humiliating failure just because of that 1%.
Ouch. Okay, I feel personally attacked already.
Right. They set these impossibly high standards and then emotionally flagellate themselves when they inevitably fall short of absolute perfection.
Yeah, I will absolutely lay awake at night, agonizing over a single typo in a 30-page report that was otherwise praised by literally everyone. It's awful. What's the next one?
The second is the expert. Their primary concern isn't really the outcome, but what and how much they know. They feel they must know absolutely everything about a subject before they have the right to speak up or take any action.
Oh, that explains so much. That is exactly why you see people who absolutely refuse to apply for a job unless they meet, like, 150% of the qualifications on the listing, while someone else with half their resume just confidently submits an application.
Spot on. It's paralyzing. A minor lack of knowledge or a single question in a meeting they can't answer off the top of their head triggers intense shame. Third, we have the natural genius.
The natural genius. That sounds like a lot of pressure.
It is. This type judges their competence entirely by speed and ease. If they have to struggle to understand a concept, or if they don't execute perfectly on the very first try, the fraud alarm blares. To them, having to put in actual effort is a sign of weakness.
Right. It's that really toxic idea of, well, if I were truly smart, I wouldn't have to study this hard. The fact that I'm sweating right now means I don't belong here.
Yes,
Oh, wow.
exactly. And fourth is the soloist. This individual believes that asking for help is a fundamental, glaring sign of weakness. They focus on who carries out the task, and they believe they must do everything entirely on their own to prove their worth.
So no delegation, no teamwork.
Nope. If a mentor helps them, or if someone gives them advice, the achievement just doesn't count in their eyes.
Okay, hold on. I relate deeply to the soloist and the perfectionist, but I really have to push back here for a second.
Yeah.
Is it always just a cognitive glitch?
What do you mean?
Because sometimes, what if I actually do need to be perfect because I'm the only one in the room who looks like me? I mean, we looked at the research on this. There is data from the British Psychological Society showing that 97.5% of women in STEM report experiencing imposter feelings.
That's a staggering statistic, yeah.
It is. When you are underrepresented, whether by gender, race, background, whatever, you often feel like you represent your entire group. If you fail, you aren't just failing for yourself. You feel like you are confirming a stereotype. So isn't that soloist or perfectionist mentality sometimes an actual survival mechanism rather than just a brain malfunction?
That is an incredibly profound point, and you are entirely right to push back on that. The pressure of being the first or the only in a professional environment, it exponentially increases the weight of every single action.
Exactly. The stakes are just objectively higher.
They are. It's no longer just about your individual competence. It becomes about representation and survival. And that reality actually leads perfectly into the fifth type, which is the superhuman.
Oh, wow. How does the superhuman operate?
The superhuman measures success by how many different roles they can flawlessly juggle at once. They feel they have to outwork, outprepare, and outperform everyone around them just to justify their baseline presence in the room.
Just to exist in that space.
Right. They have to be the perfect employee, the perfect parent, the perfect friend. And if they drop a single ball in any of those arenas, they feel they have failed entirely.
It is such a heavy burden just listening to all of this. It sounds exhausting. It feels like we are constantly at war with our own minds, carrying this massive weight and trying to outrun a shadow. How on earth do we carry this without just collapsing?
Well, this is the exact moment where the research takes a completely fascinating pivot. What if this heavy burden you are carrying is actually the exact thing making you so exceptionally good at what you do?
Wait, hold on. You're telling me that feeling like a fraud makes me better at my job?
That's exactly what I'm telling you.
Because right now, it just feels like an anchor dragging me down.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't constantly feeling like an imposter just make me hesitant and anxious and prone to making errors? How could that possibly be an advantage?
I know, it sounds completely counterintuitive, which is why we have to look at some groundbreaking research coming from MIT Sloan professor Basma Tufik. She essentially set out to challenge the universal assumption that imposter syndrome is purely a negative, destructive force.
Okay, color me intrigued. What did she find?
Her data completely debunks the myth that these thoughts are uniformly harmful.
Let me guess. She found that the people with imposter syndrome just burned out faster because their nervous systems were totally fried.
Actually, the exact opposite.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Tufik's studies reveal that imposter thoughts can act as a massive hidden advantage in the workplace. She looked at employees facing what organizational psychologists call role overload.
Which is what exactly?
It's when you are hit with too much work, too little time, and intensely high stakes. Usually that is a recipe for people to just shut down or give up.
Oh, for sure. The paralyzing overwhelm.
Right. But she found that employees who frequently experienced imposter thoughts actually worked harder and performed better in those high-pressure situations. They showed a 13.43% increase in effort compared to their highly confident peers who didn't have those thoughts.
Wait, why? If they feel like they don't belong there, why aren't they just crumbling under the pressure like everyone else?
Because of how they process the anxiety. Instead of seeing the massive workload as a confirmation of their failure, their imposter thoughts push them to view it as a compensatory challenge.
A compensatory challenge. Okay, so they're trying to make up for something.
Exactly. They think, well, I might not be the smartest person in this department, so I am just going to have to outwork this problem to make sure nobody notices my deficiencies. The fear basically becomes an engine.
Oh my gosh. So my anxiety is actually a functional defense mechanism. You're telling me that the very thing that makes me feel like I am drowning is actually the life vest keeping me afloat.
That is exactly what the data suggests. It is your brain's highly effective way of managing high-stakes situations. But here's where it gets even more interesting. It goes far beyond just working harder.
What else does it do?
Tufik found that these imposter thoughts actually make people incredibly interpersonally effective. Because they fear they aren't technically smart enough, they become highly other-oriented.
Other-oriented, what does that mean neurologically or, I guess, behaviorally?
When you lack internal confidence, your brain instinctively scans the external environment for cues to make up for it. You become hyper-attentive to others, you display better eye contact, more active listening, and higher empathy, all because you're desperately trying to read the room.
That makes so much sense. You're looking for validation or signs of danger.
Exactly. Tufik actually studied medical students to test this out.
Oh, wow. What happened with the medical students?
She found that the students who scored highest for imposter thoughts were rated by actual patients as having significantly better bedside manner.
Really? But what about their actual medical skills?
Their diagnostic accuracy, their actual medical competence, was exactly the same as the highly confident students. But because the imposter students felt they had to constantly prove themselves, they didn't just rush to a diagnosis.
Oh, they probably took more time with the patients.
Right. They listened more carefully, they asked more questions, and they engaged way more deeply with their patients' concerns.
That is incredible. They thought they were frauds, but that very fear forced them to be more present, making them tangibly better, more compassionate doctors.
Exactly. And it isn't just empathy either. It applies to problem solving too. Tufik ran another study, this time with comedians.
Wait, comedians? That's a huge shift from medical students.
Right, but comedy is all about high-stakes performance and creativity. She artificially induced imposter thoughts in half of them before they had to perform a creative task.
Wait, you can artificially induce that? That sounds a little cruel, but okay. What did they do?
The comedians who were prompted to feel like imposters actually showed more creativity than the control group. Seriously, anxiety usually totally kills creativity. How did that work?
Because the anxiety triggered a deeper level of cognitive processing. The confident comedians just relied on their default jokes, they kind of coasted. But the imposter comedians were so worried about failing that they didn't trust their first instincts.
Oh, so they had to dig deeper.
Yeah, they pushed themselves further, they explored weirder angles, and ultimately they produced much more creative material.
I am genuinely stunned by this. It completely flips the script. But, and this is a really huge but, even if it is a superpower, it still feels awful.
It does. It really does.
I mean, it is exhausting to constantly feel like you're on the verge of being exposed. How do we, keep the life vest, the empathy, the creativity, the incredible drive without the agonizing emotional suffering that comes with it?
That is the million-dollar question and the ultimate goal, and it is entirely possible. But it requires a really fundamental shift in how we process these internal experiences.
Okay, I'm ready. What's the shift? We have to learn the clinical difference between having an imposter thought and suffering from an imposter emotion.
Okay, let's break that down. Because to me, honestly, the thought and the emotion feel like the exact same thing happening at the exact same time.
They often happen simultaneously, which is exactly why they feel fused together. But an imposter thought is just a cognitive event. It's literally just a string of words generating in your brain like, I don't know how to do this, or I am going to fail.
Okay, so just the raw data of the thought.
Right. An imposter emotion, on the other hand, is the physical shame, the racing heart, the panic, and the dread that you attach to that thought. The suffering comes entirely from the emotion, not the thought itself.
So how do we infuse them?
To separate the two, clinical psychologists often use cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, strategies, specifically a foundational technique called fact versus feeling.
Okay, but how do you actually do that? Like if you're listening to this right now and the panic is actively setting in right before a big meeting, how do you apply fact versus feeling in real time?
When your brain sounds the fraud alarm, you have to ruthlessly audit the evidence. You literally pause and ask your brain, okay, what is the concrete fact here, and what is just my feeling?
But in the moment, the feeling feels like a fact.
I know, which is why you have to look for external evidence. Your feeling is screaming that you are a fraud who is about to be fired. But what are the facts? The facts are your degrees, your successful past projects, the promotion you earned last year, the positive email your boss literally sent yesterday.
You're trying to wake up the logical side of your brain.
Exactly. You have to force your prefrontal cortex, the logical, analytical part of your brain, back online to override the amygdala's emotional panic.
I was actually reading through the clinical recommendations for this, and keeping an achievement log is highly recommended for exactly this reason.
Oh, it's a fantastic tool.
Yeah, because when anxiety hijacks your nervous system, your working memory literally degrades. Like you
Yeah.
physically cannot remember your own successes in that moment of panic.
Your brain just blocks them out.
Right. So having a physical record, like a literal folder on your desktop of nice emails or a written list of wins, it serves as an external hard drive for your competence. You don't have to rely on your panicked brain to remember. You just open the file and look at the facts.
That is a highly effective, tangible strategy. It provides objective data to counter irrational feelings. But there's another approach, coming from acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, that is surprisingly powerful precisely because it sounds completely absurd.
Absurd. Okay, I love absurd. What is
It
it?
was created by Dr. Russ Harris, and it's called the banana exercise.
The banana exercise. Okay, I absolutely have to know. What on earth is the banana exercise?
Well, Dr. Harris was a young medical professional who used to experience intense, debilitating imposter thoughts while performing complex procedures, but he realized that trying to fight the thought or suppress it just made it stronger.
Oh, it's that classic psychological trap, right? Like if I tell you not to think of a pink elephant, what do you immediately think of?
A pink elephant, you can't unthink a thought just by fighting it.
Right, you just hyperfixate on it.
So instead of fighting it, he utilized a neurological mechanism called cognitive diffusion. When the thought, I'm going to mess this up, popped into his head, he wouldn't argue with it. He would simply replace the core word or thought with the phrase, I'm a banana.
Wait, I'm sorry. He just called himself a banana while doing a complex medical
Yes,
procedure?
literally, yes. And here's the neurological genius behind it. It utilizes semantic satiation. It is biologically impossible for the human brain to attach deep existential shame and dread to the thought, I'm a banana.
Oh my gosh. That is brilliant.
It instantly strips the intrusive thought of its emotional weight. You aren't waging this exhausting war with your inner critic anymore. You are just observing the anxiety, acknowledging it, substituting the fearful narrative with something utterly ridiculous, and then bringing your focus back to the task at hand.
That is hilarious, but it makes so much sense mechanically. It completely separates the amygdala's panic response from the prefrontal cortex's language centers.
Exactly.
So I don't have to force, like, toxic positivity on myself. I don't have to look in the mirror and chant, I am a powerful genius, while my brain is calling me a liar. I just have to look at the anxious thought, acknowledge it, call myself a piece of fruit, and get back to work.
Precisely. It allows you to maintain the careful, heightened attention and that other-oriented empathy that the anxiety brings without being emotionally crushed by it. You basically defuse the bomb rather than trying to smother it with your own body.
This has been such a massive perspective shift. The idea that this isn't a disease we need to cure, but it's a functional tool we can actually learn to manage and utilize.
It is a profound shift. But there is one final concept from the research that we really haven't touched on yet. And I think it is absolutely crucial for anyone listening who has tried all these tools, done the CBT, done the ACT, and still feels entirely weighed down by this.
Okay, what is it?
It's a sociological concept called systemic imposterization.
Systemic imposterization. Okay, what does that actually mean in practice?
It means that sometimes the problem isn't inside your head at all. Sometimes you do not actually have imposter syndrome. You are simply existing in a toxic, exclusionary, or hyper-competitive environment that is actively, intentionally making you feel like an imposter.
Oh, wow.
Right. If you are constantly interrupted in meetings, if you are repeatedly passed over for promotions despite your undeniable achievements, or if you are the only person of your background in your department and constantly face microaggressions, your brain isn't glitching.
Wait, so the anxiety in that case isn't a malfunction?
No,
Yeah.
not at all. Your brain is accurately reading an environment that is sending you continuous systemic signals that you do not belong. It is a completely rational response to an irrational, broken environment.
Wow. Okay, that just gave me full body chills. So next time I feel like a fraud, before I start blaming myself or trying to, fix my mindset or call myself a banana, I need to ask myself, is my brain malfunctioning or is the room I'm in just broken?
Exactly. Is
Yeah.
the room just broken?
That is just incredibly validating. Just taking a deep breath on that one. If you are listening to this right now, I really, really hope you let that sink in. Your hard work is real. Your successes are not accidents. You have not tricked anyone into believing in you. And the fact that you care so much about doing a good job is exactly why you are so good at it.
Absolutely. You belong exactly where you are.
You really do. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation today. If you found this helpful, or if it just gave you a little peace of mind, please follow or subscribe to the Inquiry Talks. We have so many more deep human conversations just like this coming your way every single week. Take care of yourselves, remember your facts over your feelings, and we will see you next week.